More than 50 years have passed since the Apollo 11 mission successfully placed human footprints on the lunar surface. But it wasn't easy, and there are multiple untold things about the Apollo 11 mission. So let's go back to July 16, 1969, and uncover 10 super interesting things that happened back then. Number 10. Legacy beyond footprints. During 1969 to 1972, astronauts didn't just leave footprints on the moon's surface. They strategically left behind items to lighten the load for takeoff, including rovers, descent, ascent stages, and astronaut boots. Moreover, Neil Armstrong left a golden replica of an olive branch on the moon's surface. The American flag from Apollo 11 that was put on the moon got accidentally knocked over by the spacecraft's powerful takeoff. But don't worry, there are still 5 more American flags standing on the moon today. Number 9. The mysterious smell of moon dust. Imagine this, a place with no air, yet a distinct smell. That's our mysterious moon. When brave Apollo astronauts hopped down onto its surface, they brought back more than just memories. They carried moon dust, a gray, clingy powder that stuck to everything like cosmic glue. As they removed their helmets from their lunar module, they felt an aroma in the air. Neil Armstrong described it as wet ashes, while his fellow space voyager, Buzz Aldrin, likened it to the aftermath of a firecracker's pop. But Neil carefully gathered a little bit of moon dirt and stashed it in his spacesuit. This was like a backup plan, in case they needed to leave quickly and didn't have time to collect rocks. From the lunar samples collected during the Apollo 11 mission, 3 minerals were identified: armalcolite, tranquilityite, and pyroxferroite. Back inside their spacecraft, the duo spread the moon dust on a special spot. They held their breath as they filled the cabin with air. Would the dirt do something unexpected? Buzz Aldrin explained, "If it did, we'd stop pressurization, open the hatch and toss it out." But guess what? Nothing happened at all. All the moonwalkers experienced it and chatted about it with their control center back on Earth. Even the last astronaut to walk the lunar landscape, Harrison Schmitt, compared it to the scent of a fired carbine. Surprisingly, not everyone got the memo about the lunar aroma. Jim Irwin, the lunar module pilot of Apollo 15, noticed the peculiar scent firsthand. His teammate, Dave Scott, chuckled, confirming, "Yeah, I think that's the lunar dirt smell. Never smelled lunar dirt before, but we got most of it right here with us." NASA enlisted mathematicians like Katherine Johnson to serve as human computers, tasked with validating engineers' calculations for accuracy. Number 8. Quarantine drama. Back in 1969, after an epic lunar journey, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins faced an out-of-this-world lockdown. NASA held its breath, fearing sneaky lunar germs might have hitched a ride. These space adventurers were swiftly taken in a high-tech Airstream trailer, which was a futuristic space quarantine pod. Zooming from USS Hornet to Pearl Harbor and jet-setting across the skies, this mobile quarantine facility was like no other. It finally touched down in Houston, carrying our brave trio. They kept their moon boots grounded at the Lunar Receiving Laboratory under NASA's watchful eye. Fast forward 21 days. On August 10th, the moment of truth arrived. Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins emerged from their quarantine cocoon, greeted by a flurry of eager reporters. Upon reaching Honolulu following their Pacific splashdown, 900 miles southwest of Hawaii, Neil Armstrong playfully completed a customs and immigration form, humorously documenting their extraterrestrial journey. And the moon landing stood as the most widely viewed televised event in the United States, up to that point in time. Number 7. Ain't no fake. Back in 2015, physicist Dr. David Robert Grimes from the University of Oxford used math to prove a point. If the US moon landings were fake, a staggering 411,000 individuals would have had to keep the secret. And guess what? His calculations showed that someone would have spilled the cosmic beans within just 3 years and 8 months. The moon landings? No fake at all. Number 6. Saturn V is still the largest and mightiest rocket in history. The Saturn V rocket remains the biggest and most powerful rocket ever created. It stood taller than 100 meters, 363 feet, and guzzled about 20 tons of fuel per second during liftoff. The fuel made up a whopping 85% of its total weight. The entire Saturn V weighed 2,800 tons and generated a thrust of 34.5 million newtons, 7.7 million pounds, when it launched. This massive power was enough to carry 130 tons into orbit around Earth, or send 43 tons to the moon. That's about as heavy as almost 4 double-decker buses in London. The Apollo crew compartment was about the same size as a large car. During liftoff and landing, the astronauts were strapped into bench-like seats in the command module, which was 3.9 meters, 12.8 feet, wide at its broadest point. It wasn't a comfortable space for someone who feels cramped easily. Behind the command module was the service module, which contained fuel tanks and engines. The lunar module, LM or LEM, was tucked away behind the command and service modules. After leaving Earth, the Apollo spacecraft executed a mid-flight maneuver to dock with the lunar module, which traveled alongside the command module. Afterward, they changed direction and headed toward the moon. Number 5. Wright Flyer's lunar leap and Aldrin's moonwalk lockdown. Did you know that in 1969, Neil Armstrong carried a special piece of the 1903 Wright Flyer, a wooden fragment and muslin fabric, to the lunar surface and back? Now, these space-traveling treasures shine bright at the National Air and Space Museum in D.C. Moonwalk memories are cool, but did you know Aldrin had a moon door dilemma? After Armstrong's epic lunar steps, Aldrin eyed the exit cautiously. Why? He worried the module might play door tricks and lock them out. Imagine the hatch pressurizing, sealing them off from the lunar landscape. Thanks to some out-of-this-world engineering, the mission stayed airtight inside and out. Aldrin recounted in an interview. I then got in position to come down, came down the ladder, and jumped off, being careful not to lock the door behind me. Number 4. The not-so-small one small step. Neil Armstrong's famous one small step for man wasn't really small. He had to descend around 3.5 feet from the Eagle's ladder to finally touch the surface. Number 3. Close call on the moon. On July 20th, 1969, Armstrong and Aldrin dazzled the world with their epic moonwalk. They cleverly left the door of the spacecraft slightly open so they wouldn't get locked out. But as they prepped to blast off back home, a tricky situation loomed. Spotting a pesky broken circuit breaker, they faced a moon mishap in the making. That little piece, a vital part of the engine arm circuit, had snapped right off the control panel. No fix, no return. They'd be stuck, marooned on the lunar surface. But Aldrin was the problem-solving genius. With quick thinking and a stroke of genius, he whipped out a trusty felt-tip pen from his suit's pocket. Ingeniously, he used it to prop up the circuit breaker. In his book, Magnificent Desolation, The Long Journey Home from the Moon, Aldrin described how they solved the problem using a felt-tip pen. After examining it more closely, I thought that if I could find something in the LM to push into the circuit, it might hold. But since it was electrical, I decided not to put my finger in, or use anything that had metal on the end. I had a felt-tipped pen in the shoulder pocket of my suit that might do the job, Aldrin wrote. With pen in place, the countdown resumed, and off they soared, leaving the moon behind. Aldrin wrote, "To this day, I still have the broken circuit breaker switch and the felt-tipped pen I used to ignite our engines." Number 2. The moon disaster. Back on July 18, 1969, President Richard Nixon's speechwriter crafted a contingency speech, just in case. Titled, "In Event of Moon Disaster," it began with solemn words, "In event of moon disaster, fate has ordained that the men who went to the moon to explore in peace will stay on the moon to rest in peace. These brave men, Neil Armstrong and Edwin Aldrin, know that there is no hope for their recovery, but they also know that there is hope for mankind in their sacrifice." Number 1. Astronauts' Galactic Insurance Plan. Astronauts always aim for the stars, but they're smart thinkers too. Faced with the cosmic risks of space travel, our heroic trio hatched an out-of-this-world idea to safeguard their loved ones: autographs. As liftoff loomed closer than a comet, these space pioneers scribbled away like cosmic calligraphers. In every free moment, they etched their names on countless envelopes. Their genius plan? If the moon's embrace turned into a one-way ticket, these autographs would become their family's lifeline. A stellar safety net, destined to fund not just everyday life, but the dreams of their little stargazers, from college dreams to life's grand adventures. Space historian Robert Perelman shared, if they did not return from the moon, their families could sell them, to not just fund their day-to-day lives, but also fund their kids' college education and other life needs. So have you got any favorite facts about Apollo 11? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments section below. We would love to hear them. With that said, thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more.